If you raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Dr. Jeffrey Springer.
And Dr. Springer, how are you currently employed?
I am a medical examiner with the state of Kentucky.
Did you perform the autopsy of Shanae Moorman?
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about your training and educational background that brought you to become a medical examiner in the state of Kentucky.
Sure. Medical examiners are forensic pathologists. So as a pathologist, I had to go through 4 years of college, which I completed at University of Richmond, and then 4 years of medical school, which I did at Drexel University in Philadelphia. I then did a 4-year anatomic and clinical pathology residency at Louisiana State University in New Orleans, and then a 1-year fellowship in forensic pathology at the University of Louisville. I completed everything in June of 2012, began working as a medical examiner with the state of Kentucky at that point, and that's how long I've been employed with them. I am board certified in anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology.
Dr. Springer, what is forensic pathology?
Forensics is the application of science to the field of law. Pathology is a branch of medicine which involves the study of disease processes. So forensic pathology is a branch of medicine, forensic sciences, and pathology, which involves the application of medical knowledge to the field of law. As a forensic pathologist, my primary role is to assist the designated coroners in the investigation of medical legal deaths.
And can you tell us generally how an autopsy is performed?
An autopsy is the external and internal examination of a deceased individual. The external examination involves documentation of clothing, personal effects, bodily features, facial features, identifying marks, scars, tattoos, medical treatment, and injuries. Once that's completed, we move on to the internal examination, where we open up the torso and examine the thoracic and abdominal organs, looking for disease processes and injuries. And then we open up the neck and the head, which are the neck organs, the brain, again evaluating for disease processes and injuries, and correlate the internal findings with the external findings.
And is that what you did on the body of Miss Moorman?
Yes.
Could you please tell us what Miss Moorman's cause of death was?
She died of traumatic asphyxia sustained due to a motor vehicle collision.
Dr. Springer, what is traumatic asphyxia?
So asphyxia is the lack of oxygen in the body, or the inability of the body to use oxygen. There are multiple causes of asphyxia. Traumatic asphyxia is one of those, and that is due to the compression of the body by an object that prevents the diaphragm and the ribs from rising, and therefore bringing in air and thus no oxygen.
Essentially, something is sitting on top of you, preventing you from breathing.
Yes.
And when did you receive Miss Moorman's body?
She came on August 6th, 2016 to the medical examiner's office, and then the autopsy was on the 7th.
Who all was present for the autopsy?
Besides the physician, which was of course me in this for this case, we also have an autopsy technician which assists in the dissection and photography of the body. So we had one tech present, and then there was also an LMPD detective, another LMPD physician, and a LMPD crime scene unit technician.
And is that pretty standard for LMPD and the crime scene unit to attend autopsies?
They do attend a lot, yes.
Dr. Springer, could you please tell us Miss Moorman's height and weight upon receipt?
She had a height of 5'2" and a weight of 108 pounds.
Was there any evidence of medical treatment on Miss Moorman?
She had EKG leads and I think defibrillator pads. Yes, so basically EKG leads and defibrillator pads are what are used to try to restart the heart via electrical measures.
We already heard from the EMT that treated her. Did you also, as part of the autopsy, did you order that a toxicology be conducted?
Yes, that is standard on all individuals that come through our office.
And what do you send off for toxicology testing?
We will send blood, urine if it's available, and vitreous humor. Vitreous humor is the clear fluid that's within your eyes. We send all three of those off to Access Laboratories, which is a forensic toxicology lab, and we can test for a number of different panels. Typically, we test for alcohols and what we consider drugs of abuse, which are things such as cocaine, fentanyl, etc. About 150 things that they look at.
What were the results of Ms. Moorman's toxicology report?
She had ethanol present in her blood at a level of 0.151% and a level of ethanol in her vitreous humor at a level of 0.204%. The ethanol was the only drug that we identified.
What is the difference between the blood level and the vitreous humor? What do each one of those tell us?
So the substances, when they in the vitreous humor, take 2 hours to match up to what the blood levels were, which basically means that what we see in the vitreous humor is representative of what the blood would have been showing 2 hours prior. Both of them are what's present at death. So when she died, her blood ethanol, which is the, in a sense, important one because that's one that's telling you her level of intoxication, her blood ethanol was 0.151. The fact that at death, her vitreous was 0.204 tells me that 2 hours prior to her dying, her blood level was 0.204.
And does the body stop metabolizing alcohol or ethanol, the medical term for it, at the time of death?
Yes.
In general, what effects would those levels of alcohol have on a person?
So a level of 0.15 and 0.2 are definitely levels that we would consider someone to be intoxicated or likely drunk. You, of course, of having your feelings of euphoria, coordination starts to suffer, there may be some fatigue or tiredness. Those are the general symptoms that would occur at levels between 0.15 and 0.2.
Would those levels have contributed to Ms. Moorman's death?
No.
No. And going back to the traumatic asphyxia and the injuries that you actually noted, is traumatic asphyxia a typical cause of death for people involved in motor vehicle collisions?
It is definitely a less common cause of death that we see with motor vehicle collisions. Most motor vehicle collision deaths, whether they be the driver or a passenger, are due to blunt force trauma, which is impact from non-sharp objects, of which you can imagine there's many of those in a car and on the road, and they get multiple different types of injuries.
So for a traumatic asphyxia diagnosis, is it important for you to know some of the history of what happened?
Yes. I should say it can be helpful.
Why is that?
There are some findings on the body for traumatic asphyxia that there are findings that can be seen that would make me think that traumatic asphyxia may have occurred in a motor vehicle collision, and I'm sure we'll talk about those. The history is always important for any type of death, just like for any type of physician visit. You need to let somebody know why you're at the doctor's office. Unfortunately, our decedents can't tell us, but we can get history from the coroner based off of who the coroner has talked to, who the police detectives have talked to, and find out what was going on at that death scene, who the person last saw, or who's last saw that person alive, who knew some medical history about the individual. So it is important to know the history, and we did receive history on this case.
And what history did you have about Ms. Moorman?
Initially, what was given to me was that she was the passenger in a vehicle and she had been ejected from the vehicle, and when found at the scene, her body was under the vehicle.
Would that be consistent with then your medical finding of traumatic asphyxia?
Yes, a vehicle would certainly have enough weight to prevent somebody from inspiring.
And specifically, what medical findings did you note in Ms. Moorman that led you to your diagnosis of traumatic asphyxia?
So I've said it a couple times, traumatic asphyxia is the compression of the body, specifically the torso region, preventing them from inspiring. So one of the things that you can get are impressions or contusions or abrasions from that area where the compression occurred. That would be a bit less specific because, of course, you can get scrapes and bruises on the body from a motor vehicle collision where there's not compression, where something's lying on top of it. But we can have those. And then what really makes me start to think about traumatic asphyxia is when we start to see petechiae. So petechiae are little red dots on the skin or even on the internal organs that are indicative of small vessels, specifically venules and capillaries, that have burst. And they burst because their pressure has increased. And they have multiple causes, but we're just going to talk about traumatic asphyxia right now, because the reasons for the petechiae in traumatic asphyxia is because with the compression at a certain area, all those small vessels above that area are not able to send their blood back to the heart because of the compression, and therefore the blood pressure in those vessels builds up and they burst. So when we find, as in this case, innumerable petechiae on the skin, on the oral mucosa, which is the inside of your lips, on the conjunctiva, which is the inside of your eyelids, and even on some of her internal organs, specifically her lungs had some petechiae. Those findings, in correlation with the history given, would be consistent with traumatic asphyxia. And the fact that we don't have lethal blunt force trauma. Again, that blunt force trauma is what I said we more often see with motor vehicle collisions. And in this case, we did not have things such as severe head trauma, aortic transections, multiple organ lacerations with lots of blood present. Those findings were not present. So all that in combination allows me to state that this was a death due to traumatic asphyxia.
As part of that, you did rule out that blunt force was a contributing factor to her death.
Correct. She did have some blunt force injuries. As I said, there were some not just petechiae, but also some contusions on the lungs, actually on the right lung. And she did have a couple of rib fractures on the right. Those are technically blunt force injuries, but they are likely due to the compression of the car pressing down and fracturing those ribs.
And doctor, as part of your autopsy, do you photographically document the injuries?
Yes.
And Your Honor, if I may approach for Commonwealths 188 through 205.
You may.
Can you take a look at those? Dr. Springer, are those photos taken during your autopsy that you conducted on August 7th of 2016?
Yes.
And do those fairly and accurately depict Ms. Moorman's injuries?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would move to introduce Commonwealths 188 through 205.
Right, subject to our bench discussion, those will be so admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Permission to publish?
You may.
All right, Doctor, I would like to go through these together. Anthony, can I get the lines?
Is it easier for the jury for me to speak to that photo or to this photo, like screen?
I don't really know.
Let's say speak to that
This one?
photo.
Okay.
Speak to
So
that
it's okay
photo
then if I
so we don't
stand up and
worry about
face it?
it.
There's a ruler or a yardstick there. Do you see it down in front?
Yeah.
If that helps.
Sure. Either this or a laser pointer. Either one. Happy to
I do
use
have a
this.
laser pointer if that would help.
I would prefer that.
Perfect. If I may approach, Judge?
You may.
Red button right there. Okay.
Perfect.
All right, tell us what we are looking at here.
So this is Miss Moorman. This is a frontal shot. Of course, we're seeing her face. And this is the marker that we use on all of our bodies to A, show a ruler, and B, indicate the number given to her. So that way we can definitively identify that every label that says 16-1114 is a picture of Shanae Moorman on autopsy.
We see an injury on her forehead. Can you tell us a little bit about that injury?
Yes. So we see a couple injuries. She's got a bruise here on her nose. She's got some abraded lacerations. Abrasion is a scraping of the skin. Laceration is tearing of the skin. Typical blunt force injuries that we see in a car accident or a pedestrian. And on her forehead, and every time you see an abrasion or a laceration or a contusion, those are sites of impact. So she's impacted something that's caused those injuries.
And doctor, you already told us that that was not a contributing factor to her death.
Correct. You will see that she does have some skin blunt force trauma, abrasions, contusions, lacerations, again indicating impact, but they are not lethal, not contributing to her death.
As part of your autopsy, you said you conduct an internal examination as well. Did you open Miss Moorman's, did you look internally to see if this caused any internal injuries to her?
This is, of course, her scalp, forehead and the scalp, and when we peel the scalp forward and peel the scalp back, she did have some contusions, some bruising on the tissue beneath, or on the inside of her scalp tissue, again, indicating impacts, but there were no skull fractures, no subdural hemorrhage, epidural hemorrhage, etc. Findings internally that would be indicative of lethal trauma.
And do you all clean the body before you start your autopsy?
Claim it?
Clean it,
Oh, clean
wash it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we take photos of the body, dirty or not cleaned up, whether that be blood or dirt or what have you, and then we wash it thoroughly after any evidence collection would be done, and then take photos of the cleaned up body.
Is that so you can see the injuries better?
Absolutely.
All right, doctor, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so a different angle from the first photo that we saw, but what are we focusing on here?
So, just for orientation, again, here's those abraded lacerations, the bruise on her nose. But hopefully what you can start to pick out is all these little red dots. And by innumerable, I mean there's no way we would count these. There's really no reason to. They are innumerable. You can see them very extensively on this right side of the forehead, face, down to the cheeks, etc. So we're starting to see the petechiae that I had talked about that would be indicative of the traumatic asphyxia.
And that is indicative of her blood not being able to flow back and forth in her veins.
Not being able to flow back to the heart, correct?
Back to the heart.
Yes.
What happens when your blood is not able to flow back to the heart?
That can lead to accumulation of toxic material in the veins, but this is more of the fact that it's not draining out of the veins is more of a indicative finding for us. Really, the asphyxia itself is primarily from the arteries that are also compressed, and the oxygen is flowing through the arteries and not being able to get up to the brain. So it's the arteries being compressed that leads to the asphyxia. The veins not draining back. What that leads to is the development of petechiae, hyperemia, suffusion, redness of the body where those petechiae are, and you can of course get accumulation of toxic substances in the veins, but that's really not going to affect the death. The death is caused by the lack of arterial flow to the brain, and therefore no oxygen going up.
Let's move on to the next one. Okay, now we're looking at a close-up. Can we see that petechiae a lot better in this photo?
I think so. All these little red dots here is the same right side of the face, so every redness here, those are petechiae.
And were the petechiae concentrated on the right side of her face?
More so, yeah. I think there was some on the left, but I think more things were on the right.
All right, now we're looking at the left.
Yeah. So definitely not as prominent. She's got a little bit of bruising here, but primarily it's on the right side of the face, maybe extending here into the nose and forehead region. Some more petechiae here on the right side of the neck. And then this is the left eye, so we see maybe a little bit here, or we are seeing a little bit here on the lower eyelid.
All right, what are we looking at in this photo?
So now we're peeling back the eyelids and looking at the conjunctiva, which are the linings of the eyelids, and we do that on both sides. And what you can see are petechiae on the inside of these eyelids. And again, petechiae, for the same reason that we saw on the skin, are just evident on that very thin membrane surface of the conjunctiva.
Were those also present on her right eye?
Yep, this is the right eye. You can actually see them a little bit better in this picture, I think. Typically, the conjunctiva, it's of course important to understand what normal looks like, and typically the conjunctiva, they may be pink, but they may be white. They certainly don't have all these dots in them, little hemorrhages here. That should not be present.
All right. And what are we looking at in this photo?
So we have flipped her upper lip outward so we can see it. Petechiae all in here. This is your little tissue here called your frenula, right in the midline of the lip. Petechiae surrounding that. So similar to the conjunctiva, your oral mucosal surfaces are very thin, and so it's very easy to see the petechiae in that area.
Did you also examine the lower lip?
Yes. And that's the lower lip. Conjunctiva, or petechiae scattered through here as well.
And I think we have a close-up of the neck.
Yep. So you can see petechiae were on the right side of the neck, and you don't see much in the midline and over to the left. So, but certainly predominantly everything is going to be on the right side.
What are we seeing here?
So I'll mention there's petechiae here, left side of the face. We've got a contusion here that has a oblique nature of it, extending from the shoulder down to the midline of the thorax. So it's a contusion. And then you see petechiae over here as well. And again, notice other than this contusion, there's not a lot going on this left side. So most everything is, petechiae are primarily over here right.
And doctor, would that be indicative of the car kind of being on the left side of her body and then her blood draining to the right?
Should we approach?
You may.
All right, doctor. So is this, knowing the history of what happened to Miss Moorman and observing the injuries, is this consistent with the car being on the left side of her body, pressing down on the left side of her body?
Is what consistent?
The injuries that we see and the petechiae being predominantly on the right.
It would be consistent. The fact that we're seeing primarily the right side not being able to drain and the petechiae primarily on the right side does suggest that the compression would be more on the left side.
On the left side. Okay, and we have another photo. What are we seeing here in more detail?
Pretty much the same stuff. Again, there's that oblique contusion there, and then here's all these petechiae. You can see the petechiae on the left side of the face. Her face is turned, so the left side is upward. So we'll have the right side stuff as well, and then the right side petechiae extending to the neck, onto the shoulder region, down the arm, so abundant petechiae extending onto the right upper thorax and even onto the upper part of the right breast.
Okay, what are we looking at here?
Just on the left inside of the elbow, just some abrasions here. Abrasion here on the left hip.
Did those injuries contribute to Miss Moorman's death?
No.
Is this just a close-up of that elbow injury?
Yep, right in here. So just some abrasion.
What are we looking at here?
So right on the right side now, so right arm, just demonstrating petechiae, just abundant amount of them.
So we see that petechiae all the way up the right arm to the shoulder.
Yeah, basically from arm all the way up, shoulder, neck, face.
What do we see here?
Backside of her, abrasion here on the upper right back, just some scraping of the skin.
Again, did that contribute to her death?
No, it did not.
And we see some discoloration, that kind of like reddish purple areas on her back. What is that?
So when you die, you quickly go through, or in a very short term time, go through a couple of changes. The body cools, that's called algor mortis. The blood in your body starts to settle based on gravity, that's called livor mortis. And your muscles start to stiffen, that's called rigor mortis. All of those changes start to happen over a period of hours. The livor mortis is going to turn the area to which it settles is going to be dark red or red purple color, and that's what we're looking at here. And this tells me that when she died, and since she's been recovered and she's been laying on her back. And so this is livor mortis. This is blood just settling to the backside, and if there's any area of pressure that's pressing on that area, the blood will kind of get pushed away from that. So this is just typical pressure area where the surface that she's lying on, the table, is pressing on that, preventing the blood from settling there. So this is the typical pattern of postmortem livor mortis on the posterior side of the body.
And that is not indicative of her cause of death, is that correct? That is
Correct.
just a side effect of postmortem?
Yes, it's the normal postmortem change that you will see.
Is this just another view of the back?
Yeah, some abrasion down here. Here's that sparing from the livor mortis, and then that blood is all the livor mortis. That's a laceration on her left knee.
Did that contribute to Miss Moorman's death? Just a cut,
A tear.
a tear?
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Springer, I believe that concludes our photos. We also heard throughout this trial that Miss Moorman had cystic fibrosis. Was there evidence of that in your autopsy findings?
Yes.
And did the cystic fibrosis contribute to her death?
No,
It did not.
it did not.
Strictly traumatic asphyxia.
Yes.
Is traumatic asphyxia an instantaneous cause of death?
No.
Tell me more about that.
There's really only one instantaneous cause of death, and that's when you have damage to your brainstem, which is often seen with motor vehicle collisions. Not in this case. As I had said, everything inside of her head was normal and without trauma. So then we move on to, there's many other types of injuries, but as far as instantaneous, only that brainstem. So then we consider traumatic asphyxia. It's not going to be an instantaneous cause of death. And the reasons for that is because when you have cut off that blood supply, it takes time for the brain to not receive enough oxygen. And it takes typically up to 1 to 2 minutes for someone to die to traumatic asphyxia, because there is a reserve supply of oxygen in there, and it isn't everything all at once, that compression isn't necessarily taking out all the oxygen right away. So it is a delayed death, or slightly time lengthy death, like I said, up to 1 to 2 minutes.
And we've heard the terms traumatic asphyxia. I think we've also heard in openings the term positional asphyxia. What is positional asphyxia compared to traumatic?
So positional asphyxia is another type of asphyxia. The end result is the same in the sense that you are going to prevent the body from inspiring and therefore bringing in oxygen. It's a bit of a delayed death, like I said, up to 1 to 2 minutes. The difference between positional and traumatic asphyxia, however, even though they're both mechanical, they both are compressing of the thorax, the positional asphyxia is when you put yourself into a position on an object that prevents you from inspiring. So I like to think of it as traumatic asphyxia. The object has been placed on the body. In positional asphyxia, the body places itself onto an object. Examples of positional asphyxia would be if you're lying over top of like a tree limb, you would have trouble inspiring. If you are trapped between a bed, if you're on the floor, trapped between a bed and the wall, and you're kind of real scrunched up like this, that would be a type of positional asphyxia. Both those things preventing inspiration, similar to the traumatic asphyxia, with the same end result, but how we got there is different.
You said, but the end result is the same. And could the medical findings also be the same for both of those things?
Yes, the autopsy findings for positional asphyxia, if present, because you don't always have findings for asphyxia, but if present, could be very similar to the traumatic asphyxia.
And for traumatic asphyxia, if an object is not on top of a person, they will not die of traumatic asphyxia.
Right, by definition, you have to have something on their torso to have traumatic asphyxia.
Dr. Springer, those are all the questions that I have for you at this time. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, cross-examination.
I do, Judge, if I can approach a second just to expedite.
You may.
Just take a Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Doctor, I guess I'd like to start with, you talked about intoxication, correct? And I think the blood alcohol level was 0.15, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And I believe you said that the vitreous blood alcohol was 0.20, is that correct?
Yes.
And that vitreous blood alcohol goes back 2 hours, is that right?
Yes.
And I gather that that's as far as it goes back. In other words, going back 2.5, 3, 4 hours, you could have a higher blood alcohol. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right.
Right. The highest I can state that it was
It's
0.204.
2 hours. That's as most as
Right.
you can
It-
take back.
Yeah, it certainly could have been higher.
All right. Now, I want to ask you some questions here about Dr. Smock, okay? He was present during the autopsy, correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, he was only present because he was associated with or part of the police investigation, correct?
Yes.
All right. And is he a pathologist?
No.
You're not only a pathologist, you're a forensic pathologist, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be a pathologist to be a forensic
Forensic
pathologist.
pathologist.
Right.
All right, so he's not a pathologist.
Correct, he is not.
And would he have been permitted, did he participate in the autopsy?
No, his only role was observation.
Would you have permitted him to participate in the autopsy?
No.
Why not?
Because I am a board-certified forensic pathologist performing my autopsy, and he would not have any, he does not have a level, he doesn't have any expertise that would, in forensic pathology, because he's not a board-certified forensic pathologist, and I would not let him participate. We don't let anybody participate short of a pathology resident learning to cut organs and learning to perform an autopsy, but he certainly was not that.
All right. And I'm making it sound like you wouldn't, obviously you wouldn't let him, but the medical examiner's office wouldn't let him perform an autopsy, correct?
Right. The office of which I am an employee of
Right.
would not permit him either.
Okay.
Correct.
So, and you all do autopsies around the state, is that fair to say?
Well, the bodies come to us from around the state.
Right, but
Yes.
The incidents can occur for all over the Commonwealth, correct?
Yes, there's 120 counties in Kentucky. In our Louisville office, we cover 40, but at various times, we have covered all 120. And I think I've done autopsy close to all 120 counties.
Right. And none of those autopsies would he be permitted to perform, correct?
Correct.
All right, now I want to ask you this. They asked about positional, let's assume for a second that Dr. Smock said the cause of death was positional asphyxia, okay? Let's assume that. Your opinion, it's traumatic asphyxia, correct?
Yes.
They are similar, but they're not the same, correct?
Correct. The end result is the same, but it's helpful or you should use the terms correctly because they explain, not just help, but explain how that person came to be in that state.
Sure, and we're in a homicide case, correct? So it'd be helpful to use the terms appropriately, correct? And this
Yes,
is not
well, always.
a positional asphyxia death, correct?
This is not positional asphyxia, this is traumatic asphyxia.
All right. Now, I want to ask you this. Is it possible that Miss Moorman was unconscious immediately?
Possibly, yes.
All right. Now, the reason I ask that is that she had, in terms of your autopsy, she had a head injury, correct?
The subscalp, yeah, the contusions underneath of the scalp as well as the ones on the face would be the head injuries.
It didn't cause her death, we understand. But she could have been unconscious, as you stated, immediately or within seconds, correct?
Possibly, yes.
All right. And when you talk about the person takes 1 or 2 minutes under traumatic asphyxia to expire, we talked as part of this case, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I went out to your office and reviewed the materials and so forth, correct?
Yes.
And you recall stating that she could have died even within seconds.
Yes, and that's why when I was speaking about the asphyxia, I said up to 1 to 2 minutes. So it's,
Okay, because up to 1 to 2, but it could be as short as a couple of seconds. Is that correct?
yes.
Now, the I want you to take a look at its Defendant's Exhibit 8A through G, their autopsy photos. I showed them to the Commonwealth, and just see if you recognize those.
Yeah. Yes.
And those true and accurate pictures from the autopsy.
Yes. They're not all pictures that we took. I can tell that because they lacked, some of them lacked the ruler, but they all are of Miss Moorman at autopsy.
It's part of the autopsy in this case, is correct?
Yes,
Yes. And you've already testified that the crime scene unit, police crime scene unit was there taking photos, correct?
yes, they took their own, yep.
All right. So Judge, I'd like to introduce Defense Exhibits A through G.
All right, they'll be so admitted.
Now, just a few things I want to get here. Thanks a lot. We've got injuries to the forehead, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And you'll agree, let's put up one of those. I'll show you 8B, which is injury to the forehead. And you've already introduced one. And that injury there, that is consistent, would you agree, with blunt force trauma to the forehead?
Yeah, so this would be the non-cleaned up image before we wash her of those abraded contusions on the forehead.
All right.
They are blunt force or blunt impact injuries.
All right, meaning her forehead hit an object, correct?
Yes.
You can have a seat.
Or an object hit her forehead.
Right, but it's,
There was an impact.
there was an impact to her
Yes.
forehead, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Incidentally, I want to ask while I have you here, and just, I'll show you 8G, that's the cleaned up wound. That clearly shows impact to the forehead, correct?
Yes, there's the abrasion, there's the laceration here as well. You can even see the skin, or the tissue underneath starting to tear.
All right, thank you. Assuming somebody said, or if Dr. Smock said, that to remove Ms. Moorman, all someone had to do was pull her out from under the car, you're...
Judge, may we approach?
You may.
Assuming Dr. Smock said someone could just go along and pull Ms. Moorman out from under the car, okay, without a problem. You're familiar somewhat with the history of this accident, correct?
Yes.
All right, and obviously no one human being could pull someone out from under a 3,000-pound object, correct?
Probably not, yeah.
Probably not. It would take multiple people lifting the car up for that to happen. Would you agree with me?
I would think, yes.
Yes.
Most likely.
All right. I want to ask you a little bit on these rollover, this is what they call a rollover accident. And those kind of accidents, Doctor, a person can get a concussion or be concussed pretty easily, correct?
I'm not sure what you mean by pretty easily, but I mean, if there's an impact to the head, there is
end up with a
potential for a
concussion.
concussion, yes.
And that's not something necessarily that you can put just an X-ray or a CAT scan and say, oh, you have a concussion, correct? That's not where it's
It's
at.
correct. It's a clinical diagnosis, meaning it's a temporary loss of consciousness.
Okay, and a person can have that, and that can be pretty hard to diagnose hours later, correct? You don't know if the person's got it or not. Like football players,
Well, you could still demonstrate symptoms potentially,
that you could demonstrate
Yeah.
symptoms. Okay.
but, you know,
Or you could not, and you still have been concussed, correct?
correct.
All right. Now, I want to ask if I can about these marks that you said, you talked about petechiae, okay? And you talked about marks, I think, across kind of the left side of the chest.
Right
You
side.
recall that?
Right side.
Or,
Marks or petechiae?
marks on the left side of the chest.
Oh, the oblique mark?
Yes.
Yes, on the left side, yes.
On the left, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. I'll show you, I think they presented one, but I'll show you 8F. If you could just take a look at that. I think that's the wrong one. Is that the mark you're talking about?
Yes, it's probably hard for them to orient because it's close up, but that is the mark that we had been talking about, the one that goes from the left shoulder to the left upper part of the thorax. It's a
Starts
bruise.
at the left shoulder.
Yeah, it's a bruise.
Okay. Now, it could be a bruise from an object, correct?
It could, yes.
All right. But when we talked, you didn't think it was, but you said you couldn't rule out that that was a seatbelt mark.
So,
Did you say that, doctor? Did you say that you couldn't rule out that it was a seatbelt mark?
yes, I did say that I could not rule that out.
All right. Now, let's keep going. If that's a seatbelt mark, and you're not saying it is, I understand that, okay?
Correct.
All right. But if it is, that'd be a seatbelt mark from the left shoulder going this way. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that, of course, would be consistent with a driver's seatbelt, correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, that mark, which you said would be consistent or could be consistent, you're not saying that that's a seatbelt mark, correct?
Correct.
But you did tell me you couldn't rule it out, correct? All right. You can sit down, that's fine. Thank you, doctor. Now, fair to say, the medical examiner's office, when you all do an autopsy, you all will talk to the people involved, correct? Like, I can call you up and you would sit down and talk to me.
Yes, yeah.
Right, because I'm a lawyer on the case. That's one of the things you all do, correct?
Yes.
All
yes.
right? So a person can call up, make an appointment, come in, sit down, and talk to y'all, right?
Yes.
And obviously you do that for the other side, correct?
Yes.
Did Dr. Smock ever talk to you?
No.
That's all.
All right, redirect.
Dr. Springer, we've heard a lot about Dr. Smock, but this is your autopsy, right?
This is my autopsy.
This is your autopsy, your findings.
Yes.
And we heard about the possibility of Miss Moorman being unconscious due to that head injury.
Correct.
But
An
you
impact.
can't tell us if she was or not.
Correct, I do not know.
She could have been conscious.
She could have been.
She could have been unconscious.
She could have been.
And I I want to look at a photo of those marks on her chest. Let me have the iPad, thank you. One more time with you. Okay. So we're talking about what is on the right of the screen, which would be the left side of her body, right?
Yes.
Okay. How many autopsies have you done over the course of your career?
About 3,500.
It's very specific. But a lot of autopsies. Have you seen other individuals that had been involved in motor vehicle collisions?
Many.
And have you seen possible seatbelt mark injuries?
Yes.
Although you have done over 3,500 autopsies and you've seen a lot of these potentially seatbelt mark injuries, can you tell us with any sort of medical certainty if that is a seatbelt mark injury or not?
I cannot.
You cannot. Why not?
So, seatbelt injuries, in this case, the lap belt, the shoulder belt, are what we would call a patterned injury, and you can see with it an abrasion or bruising of the skin due to the seatbelt being on the person, and when that person moves and the seatbelt suddenly grabs them to hold them in, which is its purpose. It can leave a mark, and if it does so, it would do it, in the direction in which it's laying, which is why it was referred to. If this is a seatbelt mark, then it would be from the driver's side because the seatbelt would be going that way, as opposed to a passenger side or the right side. It would be going the other direction. However, these pattern injuries that could result from a seatbelt are not specific, meaning that there may be something else that can produce an injury that looks just like this. So all I can say about it is that it is a linear, meaning line-shaped, oblique, meaning not horizontal or vertical, but but on an angle, contusion extending from the front of the left shoulder to the upper part of the left thorax. So that's where my description of it would stand. I would not flat out call this a seatbelt injury or flat out call it some other injury. But as I've been asked, could this be from a seatbelt? My answer would be yes, it could be.
Could it also be from the car laying on top of her?
Yes, it could be from that as well.
And would you expect to see a seatbelt injury on an individual who was ejected from a vehicle?
Not likely, because that's the purpose of the seatbelt. They're not 100%, but the purpose of the seatbelt is to hold them in the car and prevent them from being ejected. So most likely, somebody who is ejected from a car is not wearing a seatbelt.
And we know Ms. Moorman was ejected from the car. That's the history that you received.
That's the history given to me, yes.
Okay. And back to this seconds to 1 to 2 minutes that it takes for somebody to die from traumatic asphyxia. Ms. Moorman could have died within seconds. Is that right?
Correct.
She could have also died within up to 2 minutes.
Approximately, yes.
Approximately 2 minutes. But ultimately, if the object, in this case the car, is not on top of her, Ms. Moorman does not die.
Correct. Based on the autopsy and the lack of lethal findings elsewhere, she would still be alive.
Had she been pulled out from the car, she may have lived.
Correct.
That's all I have, Dr. Springer. Thank you.
You can sit back down. Recross.
Thank you. Obviously, had she been pulled out of the car or from under the car, would have depended how long that would take, correct? If that was
Yes,
if
of
it
course.
couldn't be done in 1 or 2 minutes, correct?
Right.
All right.
Right.
So that's first thing I wanted to ask you. Second thing, when they asked about, they said, well, you wouldn't expect to be ejected and have a seatbelt. Did they ever tell you how far this car rolled?
They might have. I'm just not recalling at this moment.
Okay. All right. Don't know. correct?
At this moment, I do not
Okay.
know.
And obviously, although you're a forensic pathologist, you'll agree that you're not a quote seatbelt expert, correct?
I am not a seatbelt expert,
All right.
correct.
All right. And finally, they asked you about this positional asphyxia and so forth, and traumatic asphyxia and so forth. This is different from strangulation, correct?
Yes,
All right, so if a doctor were to compare this to strangulation, this is not what this is, correct? This is a compression. It's fair to say?
yes, this is compression of the thorax.
All right. So someone comes in and says, I'm an expert in strangulation. That's not what we have. That's not the kind of event we have here, is it?
It is not. Strangulation is a type of asphyxia.
Right, but it's not the event we have here.
Correct.
And regarding bottom line of your testimony, two things. She could have died almost immediately, and what the mark we saw, which would be from the driver's side, could be a seatbelt mark, correct?
She could have died within seconds,
Yeah.
and that mark
Could be.
could be a seatbelt.
Thank you, doctor.
Anything else of this witness?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, you can step down, thank you.